Hello and welcome to History at Night. Picture yourself standing on a windswept shore as the first light of dawn breaks across the grey waters of the North Sea. The salt spray stings your face as you grip the carved wooden rail of a sleek longship. Your heart pounds with anticipation and fear as you gaze toward a distant coastline where smoke rises from unsuspecting villages. You are not just an observer of history tonight. You are about to become part of it. You are about to experience what it truly felt like to be a Viking raider in the 9th century. To live the life of a Norseman who left behind to seek everything, fortune, glory, and perhaps death across the treacherous seas. This is not the story you think you know. Tonight we will strip away the romanticized myths of horned helmets and berserker fury to reveal the raw, visceral reality of Viking life. We will feel the ache in your muscles from rowing for days across open water. We will taste the fear in your mouth as you prepare for battle. We will experience the brotherhood forged in blood and salt spray, and the crushing loneliness of being far from home. But before we step aboard that longship and sail into the unknown, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple and wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I am always curious to know where in the world you are joining me tonight, so please share in the comments. And now, settle in. Let the modern world fade away as we travel back over 1,000 years to become the raiders who struck terror into the hearts of medieval Europe. Your story begins not with adventure, but with desperation. You are the third son of a farmer in the fjords of western Norway. The year is 845 AD, and your world is one of harsh winters, thin soil, and an unforgiving landscape that barely yields enough to keep your family alive. Your father's small plot of land will go to your eldest brother, according to the ancient laws of inheritance. Your second brother will receive what little remains. For you, there is nothing. No land, no inheritance, no future beyond serving others or scraping out a meagre existence on the margins of society. This is the brutal mathematics of Viking Age Scandinavia. Too many sons, too little land, and a culture that values honor and wealth above all else. The decision to join a raiding expedition is not made lightly. You have heard the stories whispered around winter fires of men who sailed west across the Whale Road and returned with silver arm rings, silk cloth, and tales of easy victories over soft southern lands. But you have also heard of ships that never returned, swallowed by storms or destroyed by enemy swords. Your mother weeps when you tell her of your decision. Your father nods grimly, understanding that this may be the only path to the prosperity and respect that will never come from scratching at the rocky soil of your homeland. The longship that will carry you to your fate is a marvel of Norse engineering and craftsmanship. 30 paces from stem to stern, it sits low and sleek in the water like a hunting wolf. Its shallow draft allows it to navigate rivers and coastal waters where larger vessels cannot go, bringing Viking raiders deep into the heart of enemy territory. The ship's single square sail, woven from wool and stained deep red with iron oxide, can catch even the gentlest breeze. But when the wind fails, 16 pairs of oars manned by 32 warriors will drive the vessel forward with relentless efficiency. You are one of those 32 men, and your life now depends entirely on your oarmates. These are not your kinsmen or childhood friends. They are a collection of younger sons, landless men, exiled warriors, and fortune seekers drawn from across the fjords and valleys of Norway. Some are barely more than boys seeking to prove themselves. Others are grizzled veterans with scars marking their arms and faces, men who have seen battle and survived to raid again. What binds you together is not blood or friendship, but shared desperation and the ancient Norse code of loyalty to your sworn companions. The ship's captain, the man who will lead this expedition, is a jarl named Thorvald Ironarm, His nickname comes not from any physical deformity, but from his skill with weapons and his reputation for never retreating from a fight. He is perhaps 40 winters old, ancient by the standards of your violent age, and his survival to such an advanced age speaks to his cunning as much as his courage. Thorvald owns this ship, has recruited this crew, and will decide where you raid and when you fight. His word is law on the whale road, and disobedience means death or abandonment on a foreign shore. The preparations for departure take place over several days as supplies are loaded and final rituals performed. You watch as barrels of water and ale are secured in the ship's hold alongside sacks of dried fish, hard bread, and strips of salted meat. These provisions must last for weeks or even months, depending on how far you sail and how successful your raids prove to be. Weapons are sharpened and armor repaired. Those wealthy enough to own mail shirts check every ring for damage. Others, like yourself, must rely on thick leather jerkins, wooden shields, and the blessing of the gods. The night before departure, Thorvald leads the crew in sacrifices to ensure favorable winds and successful raiding. A horse is slaughtered on the beach, its blood sprinkled on the ship's prow, while the crew chants prayers to Odin All-Father, the one-eyed god of war and wisdom who gathers the slain in his great hall of Valhalla. The horse's meat is roasted over driftwood fires, and you feast with your companions, knowing it may be the last hot meal you enjoy for many days. The ale flows freely, loosening tongues and binding the crew together in shared purpose. Men boast of their intended deeds, speak of the wealth they will win, and sing the old songs of heroes who died gloriously in battle. As dawn approaches, you make your way to the longship with your few possessions bundled in a leather sack. Your equipment is simple but deadly. A round wooden shield painted with geometric designs in red and yellow, a long-handled axe with a broad iron blade, the most practical and affordable weapon for a man of your station, a seax, the single-edged knife that every Viking carries, useful for everything from cutting rope to settling disputes. You wear a simple iron helmet without the horns of popular imagination, thick woolen clothing dyed blue with woad, and sturdy leather boots that will serve you whether walking on deck or wading through coastal shallows. The ship is pushed from the beach by the entire crew working together, their feet slipping on wet stones as they strain against the vessel's weight. When the longship floats free, you scramble aboard and take your position at one of the oars. The wooden shaft is worn smooth by countless hands, and as you grip it, you feel connected to all the raiders who have sat in this same spot before you. The rhythm of rowing is established by the ship's drummer, whose steady beat will drive you forward across hundreds of miles of open ocean. The first sensation that strikes you as the ship moves into deeper water is the constant motion. Unlike the solid earth you have known all your life, the deck beneath your feet rises and falls with every wave. Your stomach churns as you struggle to adapt to this new reality. Around you, other first-time raiders are equally miserable, their faces pale and drawn as they fight against seasickness. The veterans laugh at your discomfort, but not unkindly. They remember their own first voyages and the adjustment required to become true sea wolves. The work of rowing is brutally hard. Your hands, soft from farm work, quickly develop blisters that burst and bleed before forming calluses. Your back aches from the constant pulling motion, and your shoulders burn with fatigue. The oar seems to grow heavier with each stroke, and the rhythm that seemed manageable in harbour becomes a grinding endurance test in the open sea. When the wind picks up and the sail is raised, you feel blessed relief as the crew rests their oars and lets the wind drive the ship forward. But the wind is an unreliable ally. Sometimes it blows from the wrong direction, forcing you to row against its resistance. Sometimes it dies away completely, leaving the longship becalmed in waters as smooth as polished metal. And sometimes it rises to a howling gale that threatens to tear the sail apart and drive the ship beneath the waves. In these moments, you learn what it means to trust your life to your shipmates and to the skill of your captain. The nights at sea are perhaps the most challenging part of the journey. There to sleep on, place the narrow, is no comfortable deck of a longship. You wrap yourself in a woolen cloak and huddle against your sea chest, using it as both pillow and backrest. The ship never stops moving, rolling and pitching with the waves, making true rest impossible. You doze fitfully, always aware of the water rushing past just inches from your head. When storms arise, sleep becomes unthinkable as every man must work to keep the ship afloat. The food aboard ship is monotonous and often spoiled. The dried fish develops a coating of green mold that must be scraped away before eating. The hard bread becomes infested with weevils, adding unwelcome protein to your diet. Fresh water is strictly rationed, leaving your mouth perpetually dry and your throat raw from salt spray. You begin to dream of simple pleasures like fresh bread, clean water, and a warm bed that does not rock with the motion of the waves. As the days pass, you notice changes in yourself and your companions. The soft flesh of civilized life melts away, replaced by lean muscle and weathered skin. Your hands become tools of rope and wood, equally comfortable gripping an oar or a weapon. Your eyes grow accustomed to scanning the horizon for signs of land, weather, or enemy ships. You learn to read the moods of sea and sky, understanding which clouds bring rain and which winds will fill your sail. The crew around you is also transforming from a collection of individuals into something more dangerous and unified. Shared hardship creates bonds stronger than kinship. The man who helps you adjust your oar technique becomes your trusted friend. The veteran who shares his knowledge of seamanship earns your respect and loyalty. Even Thorvald Ironarm, initially a distant and intimidating figure, becomes more human as you witness his skill in navigating treacherous waters and his care for the crew's welfare. But beneath this growing camaraderie lies an undercurrent of violence that never entirely disappears. These are not peaceful farmers or merchants. They are warriors who have chosen a life of raiding and conquest. Arguments over food rations or sleeping space can quickly escalate to knife fights. Who seem men jovial and friendly while sharing ale can become deadly enemies over perceived slights to their honor. The code of the crew maintains order, but it is enforced through the ever-present threat of violence. The code itself is simple but absolute. Every man aboard has sworn an oath to follow Thorvald's commands during battle and to share equally in any plunder taken. To break this oath means death or exile, fates equally terrible for a man far from home. You have seen what happens to oath breakers in the stories told around winter fires. They become nithing, men without honor, cursed to wander alone until they die forgotten and unmourned. This fate terrifies you more than any enemy's sword. As the longship cuts through the grey waters day after day, you begin to understand the true nature of your transformation. You are no longer the farmer's son who worked the thin soil of Norway. That person is dying, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. The constant threat of death at sea, the brutal physical demands of rowing, and the proximity of violent men are forging you into a weapon. Your muscles grow lean and strong. Your reflexes sharpen. Your mind learns to think in terms of survival and opportunity. The first sign that you are approaching enemy territory comes not from sight, but from smell. The smoke of cooking fires and the scent of cultivated land drift across the water long before any coastline becomes visible. Thorvald stands at the prow, his experienced eyes scanning the horizon, while his nose tests the wind like a hunting wolf detecting prey. He has raided these waters before and knows every inlet and river mouth where a longship might find safe harbour. When the coast of Northumbria finally appears as a dark line against the morning sky, your heart begins to race with anticipation and terror. This is the moment you have sailed hundreds of miles to reach, the moment that will determine whether you return home wealthy and honoured or never return at all. The green hills and scattered settlements look peaceful and prosperous, a stark contrast to the harsh landscape of your homeland. Here is everything you have been promised. Rich monasteries filled with gold and silver, fat cattle grazing in lush pastures, and soft people who have forgotten the arts of war. But as the longship draws closer to shore, you realize that the stories you heard around winter fires were only half the truth. Yes, the land appears wealthy and the people unprepared for war. But you are only 32 men in a single ship, far from any hope of reinforcement or rescue. If the locals organize resistance, if they have hidden warriors or fortified positions, if other Viking crews have already alerted them to the threat, you could all be dead before sunset. The wealth you see before you is protected by your own courage and the sharpness of your weapons. Thorvald orders the sail lowered and the oars deployed as the longship enters a narrow river mouth, hidden by overhanging trees. The water here is brown with silt and barely deep enough for the ship's shallow draft. You row slowly and carefully, every man alert for signs of ambush or obstruction. The silence is oppressive after weeks of wind and wave song. Even the splash of oars seems dangerously loud in this alien landscape. The target Thorvald has chosen is a small monastery built on a low hill beside the river. Through gaps in the trees, you can see stone buildings with red tile roofs, a wooden bell tower, and gardens where robed figures move between rows of vegetables. This is not one of the great abbeys like Lindisfarne or Jarrow that have already felt the bite of Viking axes. This is a smaller, more vulnerable target, chosen precisely because it will offer less resistance and fewer complications. As you study the monastery, you begin to understand the calculating mind behind this raid. Thorvald has not brought you here on a mad adventure or a desperate gamble. Every aspect of this expedition has been planned with the cold precision of a master craftsman. The timing of your arrival coincides with the harvest season, when the monastery's stores will be full. The approach by river allows for a swift escape if local forces mobilize against you. The target itself offers maximum reward with minimum risk, exactly the kind of pragmatic decision that has kept Thorvald alive through countless raids. The longship is beached in a sea cove perhaps, Luded sea half a mile downstream from the monastery. Working quickly and quietly, the crew unloads weapons and equipment, while Thorvald assigns roles for the coming assault. You are placed in the second wave of attackers, those who will secure the perimeter and gather plunder while the veterans handle the initial fighting. It is both a blessing and a curse. You will face less immediate danger, but you will also have fewer opportunities to prove your courage and earn a larger share of the spoils. Your hands shake as you don your helmet and check your weapons one final time. The iron feels cold and heavy, a reminder that you are about to cross a line from which there may be no return. Around you, other first-time raiders show similar signs of nervous tension. Some vomit from anxiety, others mutter prayers to Odin or Thor, and a few simply stare into space with the vacant look of men contemplating their own mortality. The veterans, by contrast, seem almost relaxed as they prepare for battle. They joke quietly among themselves, share final swigs of ale, and move with the easy confidence of men who have done this many times before. Their finesse is both reassuring and terrifying. They know what is coming in ways you cannot yet comprehend, and their casual attitude toward violence speaks to how thoroughly they have embraced the raider's life. Thorvald gives the signal, and the attack begins. The first wave of Vikings moves through the trees like hunting wolves, their weapons gleaming in the filtered sunlight. You follow with the second wave, your heart hammering against your ribs as you struggle to move quietly through the underbrush. Every snapping twig sounds like thunder. Every rustling leaf seems to announce your presence to the world. The first sounds of combat reach you as a confusion of shouts, screams, and clashing metal. The monastery's bell begins to ring frantically, its bronze voice carrying news of disaster across the peaceful countryside. You emerge from the trees to see Vikings pouring through the monastery's gates, while robed figures flee in all directions. Some of the monks attempt to defend their sacred treasures, with agricultural tools and walking sticks. Others simply run, their brown robes flapping as they disappear into the surrounding fields. You witness your first death as a young monk swings a hayfork at one of the veterans. The Viking sidesteps the clumsy attack and responds with a casual axe stroke that opens the monk's skull like an egg. The man drops instantly, his blood spreading across the monastery's stone courtyard. The sight should horrify you, but instead you feel a strange detachment, as if you are watching events unfold in a dream or saga told around a distant fire. The monastery falls within minutes. These are not warriors defending a fortress, but scholars and holy men caught completely unprepared for violence. Their resistance collapses as soon as they realize the reality of fighting foot-trained killers with farming implements. Most flee or surrender, leaving the Vikings in complete control of buildings, treasures, and stores. Your role in the aftermath gather is to help plunder while others secure prisoners and search for hidden valuables. The monastery's wealth exceeds even Thorvald's expectations. The altar is adorned with gold candlesticks and silver crosses. The library contains illuminated manuscripts whose vellum pages are decorated with gold leaf. The kitchen stores hold barrels of ale, wheels of cheese, and salted pork enough to feed the crew for weeks. But the greatest treasure lies in the monastery's workshop, where the monks craft religious artifacts for sale to wealthy nobles. Here you find silver chalices, golden reliquaries, and jewelry set with precious stones. Each piece represents months of skilled labor and considerable raw materials. Melted down, this treasure will provide enough silver to make every crew member wealthy by Norse standards. As you work to load the plunder into sacks and barrels, you notice how the other raiders conduct themselves. There is no frenzied looting or unnecessary destruction. Everything proceeds according to a plan established through years of experience. Valuable items are carefully catalogued and protected. Useful supplies are gathered efficiently. Even the monastery's livestock is herded toward the river for transport to the ship. The few monks who did not flee are treated as valuable commodities rather than enemies to be slaughtered. These men possess skills in reading, writing, and metalworking that make them worth more alive than dead. They will be sold in the slave markets of Dublin or Hedeby, their knowledge and abilities commanding high prices from buyers who value educated servants. The entire raid, from the first attack to the loading of the last treasure, takes less than 3 hours. By midday, the longship is riding low in the water under the weight of plunder, while columns of smoke rise from the burning monastery buildings. You have participated in the destruction of a center of learning that took decades to build and will never be replaced. The knowledge contained in burned manuscripts is lost forever. The community of scholars has been scattered or enslaved. Yet as you take your place at the oars for the journey home, you feel no guilt or remorse. The monastery's wealth now belongs to you and your oath-sworn companions. The monks' fate was determined by their weakness and your strength. This is the way of the world as you have learned to understand it. The strong take from the weak, and mercy is a luxury that raiders cannot afford. The return journey begins in triumph, but triumph at sea is always fragile. The longship sits heavy in the water, weighted down with treasure and supplies that make it slower and less maneuverable than the sleek vessel that brought you here. Every barrel of ale and sack of silver changes the ship's balance, requiring constant adjustments to rowing technique and sail handling. What should feel like victory carries the seeds of new dangers. Thorvald orders a different route home, following coastal waters rather than striking directly across the open sea. This is the wisdom of an experienced raider. The direct route would be faster, but it would also leave you exposed and vulnerable if storms arise or enemy ships give chase. The coastal route offers opportunities to beach the ship if weather turns bad, and provides access to fresh water and food if supplies run low. As the monastery burns behind you, sending a pillar of black smoke into the clear sky, you understand that this beacon will alert every settlement within miles to your presence. Church bells begin ringing in the distance, their bronze voices carrying news of the raid from village to village. Soon, every local lord and sheriff will know that Vikings are in their waters. The race is on to reach the open sea before organized resistance can be mounted against you. The first test comes sooner than expected. As the longship rounds a bend in the river, you see horsemen gathering on both banks. These are not monks or farmers, but armed men carrying spears and shields. Word of the raid has travelled faster than your heavily laden ship, and someone with authority has managed to organize a response. The riders pace the ship along the riverbank, their horses snorting and pawing the ground as they wait for orders. Thorvald studies the situation with the cold calculation you have learned to respect. The horsemen cannot attack while you remain in deep water, but they can follow the ship to the sea and alert coastal defences to your presence. Worse, they might have archers among their number. A few well-placed arrows could wound or kill crew members, reducing your ability to row or fight your way clear of trouble. The solution comes from one of the veterans, a scarred warrior named Gunnar, who has raided these waters before. He suggests a night escape, using darkness to slip past the watching horsemen and reach the open sea undetected. It is a risky plan that requires perfect timing and flawless execution, but it offers the best chance of avoiding a running battle with superior numbers. The longship is beached in a hidden cove as the sun sets behind the western hills. The crew makes camp without fires, eating cold food and speaking in whispers, while sentries keep watch for enemy movements. You lie wrapped in your cloak, listening to the gentle lap of waves against the ship's hull and wondering if this will be your last night alive. The monastery's treasure lies stacked around you, but gold and silver offer no comfort when death stalks the darkness. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by the changing of guards and the distant sound of horses moving through the forest. The local forces are still out there, still hunting, still waiting for daylight to reveal your position. You dream of home and wake to find frost covering your cloak. Autumn is advancing, and the sailing season grows shorter with each passing day. The escape begins 2 hours before dawn. Working by feel and memory, the crew pushes the longship back into the water and takes their positions at the oars. No word is spoken as you row slowly downstream, using the current to help carry the heavy vessel toward the sea. The only sounds are the gentle splash of oars and the creak of rope and timber. The darkness that conceals you also blinds you to potential dangers. Submerged logs could hole the ship. Hidden sandbanks could ground you until daylight reveals your position to waiting enemies. Enemy boats could be lying in ambush at the river mouth. Every stroke of the oars carries you either toward safety or toward disaster, and there is no way to know which until it is too late to change course. The first grey light of dawn finds you still in the river, but the sea is visible ahead as a lighter patch in the darkness. The horsemen who followed you the day before are nowhere to be seen, but that could mean they have given up or that they are waiting somewhere you cannot see them. Thorvald orders the crew to increase the rowing pace, trading stealth for speed as the race against daylight begins. The river mouth opens before you like a gateway to freedom, but crossing that threshold brings new challenges. The sea beyond is grey and choppy, whipped by a stiff wind that will make rowing difficult, but will fill your sail once it is raised. More importantly, the open water offers room to manoeuvre and speed to outrun pursuit. No horse can follow you across the Whale Road. As the longship clears the river mouth and enters the North Sea, you feel a surge of relief mixed with exhaustion. The immediate danger is past, but the journey home will test your endurance and seamanship in different ways. The ship rides lower than it did on the outward voyage, making it more vulnerable to rough seas. The extra weight changes how it responds to wind and wave, requiring constant adjustment from helmsman and crew. The weather, which had been your ally during the raid, now turns hostile. Grey clouds gather on the horizon, promising the kind of autumn storm that can drive even the best ships to the bottom. Thorvald studies the sky with the worried expression of a man who knows the sea's moods. He orders the crew to secure all loose gear and prepare for rough weather. The storm strikes at midday, transforming the sea from grey swells to towering walls of dark water. Rain falls in sheets that make it impossible to see beyond the ship's length. The wind howls through the rigging with a voice like all the drowned sailors who ever sailed these waters. You grip your oar with hands made slippery by rain and spray, fighting to maintain the rhythm that keeps the ship moving forward. The longship climbs each wave like a mountain, its bow pointing toward the hidden sky before plunging into the trough beyond. Water crashes over the sides with every wave, soaking the crew and threatening to swamp the treasure-heavy vessel. You bail frantically between rowing strokes, using leather buckets and wooden bowls to throw seawater back where it belongs. This is when you learn what separates veteran raiders from those who die on their first voyage. The experienced men work with calm efficiency, even as the ship threatens to break apart beneath them. They know which waves to fight and which to ride. They understand how to keep the ship's head pointed into the wind and how to use the sail as both propulsion and sea anchor. Their knowledge keeps you alive when your own terror would freeze you into inaction. Hours pass in this grinding battle against wind and wave. Your arms ache from rowing and bailing. Your eyes burn from salt spray. Your stomach churns with seasickness and fear. Several times you are certain the ship will capsize or break apart, sending you all to join the fish in their cold halls. But the longship holds together, its flexible construction allowing it to bend with the sea's punishment rather than resist and break. The storm finally passes as the sun sets, leaving you exhausted and grateful to be alive. The sea calms to long, rolling swells that rock the ship like a mother's cradle. You bail out the last of the storm water and take inventory and of damage. 2 Loss's oars are cracked and need replacement. Several sections of rigging require repair. One man has a broken arm being from thrown against the mast. But the ship is intact, the treasure is secure, and every crew member lives to see another day. The remainder of the journey home passes in a haze of exhaustion and determination. You row when the wind fails and rest when it fills the sail. You eat spoiled food and drink stale water without complaint. You stand watches in the cold darkness and wake stiff and sore for another day of labour. The treasure that seemed so important after the raid becomes secondary to the simple goal of reaching home alive. The Norwegian coast appears on the horizon like a promise kept. The familiar outline of fjords and headlands stirs emotions you thought had been burned out of you by weeks of hardship. This is your homeland, the place where your story began and where it will continue. You have survived your first raid and proven yourself worthy of the company of sea wolves. The boy who left Norway seeking fortune and glory is gone forever, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. The longship beaches on the same stretch of sand where your journey began, but you are not the same man who helped push it into the sea. Your hands are scarred by rope and weapons. Your body is lean and strong from weeks of hard labour. Your eyes carry the 1,000-yard stare of someone who has seen violence and death. You have crossed the line that separates farmers from warriors, and there is no going back. The division of treasure takes place on the beach, with the entire crew gathered in a circle around Thorvald. This is the moment that justifies all the hardship and danger, the culmination of weeks of shared risk and brotherhood. Each man's share is counted out in silver coins, golden ornaments, and precious objects taken from the monastery. Your portion is more wealth than your family has seen in generations. But wealth alone does not make a Viking raider. As you hold your share of the treasure, you realize that something more valuable has been earned through this voyage. You have gained the respect of dangerous men and proven your courage under fire. You have learned skills that will serve you well in future raids. Most importantly, you have discovered that you possess the strength and cunning necessary to survive in a world where only the strong prosper. The crew disperses to their homes and families, but the bonds forged during the voyage remain strong. These men are now your sworn brothers and common purpose. When, united by shared dangers, Thorvald plans his next raid, you will be among the first to volunteer. The peaceful life of a farmer holds no appeal for someone who has tasted the fierce joy of victory and the bitter satisfaction of survival against impossible odds. Your mother weeps when she sees the scars on your hands and the hardness in your eyes. But she also sees the silver arm rings that mark you as a successful warrior. Your father nods approvingly at the treasure you bring home and the respect you have earned among the community's fighting men. You are no longer the landless third son with no prospects. You are a proven raider, a man who has sailed the Whale Road and returned with wealth and honor. Winter approaches, bringing with it the season of storytelling and planning. Around the fires of the Great Hall, you and your shipmates will tell and retell the story of your raid, polishing the details until they shine like the silver you brought home. Each telling will add new elements, transforming a simple monastery raid into an epic worthy of the Skalds. Future generations will hear these stories and dream of their own voyages to fame and fortune. But beneath the celebration and storytelling lies a darker truth that you are only beginning to understand. The life of a Viking raider is not sustainable indefinitely. Each voyage brings new risks and challenges. Age and injury will eventually claim even the most skillful warriors. The luck that preserved you through one raid may not hold for the next. You have won your first battle against fate, but the war continues with each sunrise. The treasure you earned will not last forever if you spend it on feasts and fine clothes. True wealth comes from using one successful raid to finance larger and more profitable ventures. Some veterans invest their silver in ships and crews of their own, becoming captains rather than crew members. Others use their wealth to buy land and establish themselves as respected members of society. The choices you make during the coming winter will determine whether your raiding career ends in glory or disaster. As spring returns to the fjords and ice breaks free from the shoreline, you find yourself changed in ways that go far deeper than the silver addor, rings in your arms, or the scars marking your hands. The comfortable rhythms of farm life that once defined your existence now feel alien and confining. You wake before dawn not to tend livestock, but because your body has learned the watch patterns of a longship. You scan the horizon out of habit, searching for sails that will never appear in these peaceful waters. The skills that kept you alive on the Whale Road have no place in the mundane world of planting and harvest. Your brothers notice the transformation immediately. Where once you deferred to their authority as older siblings, you now carry yourself with the confidence of a man who has faced death and emerged victorious. Your eldest brother, heir to your father's meagre holdings, regards you with a mixture of envy and unease. He sees the respect you command among the local warriors, the way men listen when you speak of distant lands and foreign enemies. His inheritance of rock and thin soil seems poor compensation compared to the wealth you earned with axe and oar. The winter months drag by with agonizing slowness. The fierce urgency that drove you across storm-tossed seas is replaced by the tedious patience required for survival in a land where nothing grows for half the year. You mend nets and sharpen tools with the same hands that once wielded weapons in anger. You listen to your mother's concerns about crops and weather with the distracted attention of a man whose thoughts dwell on more dangerous shores. The domestic concerns that once seemed important now feel trivial compared to the life and death decisions of a raiding voyage. Yet even as you chafe against the limitations of winter life, you begin to understand the deeper currents that drive Norse society. The wealthy jarls who outfit raiding expeditions are not simply seeking adventure or glory. They are responding to the same economic pressures that drove you to join Thorvald's crew, but on a larger scale. Too many people, too little arable land, and a culture that measures worth in silver and reputation create a system that must expand or collapse. The raids that terrorize foreign shores are not random acts of violence, but calculated responses to the harsh mathematics of survival in you. Earn the perspective on your own understanding brings with it a new future north. This monastery. The treasure thed from raid will not sust the Jure in you indefinitely. Like in shipsels who invest their wealth and weapons your current larger prosperity, and to build something, you must use more lasting of your shipmates have coming. Some plans for the sailing already begun making season. Gunnar, the scarred veteran who suggested your nighttime escape, speaks of organizing his own expedition to the rich trading cities of the Frankish coast. Others whisper of joining the great armies that are carving out kingdoms in the green lands across the Western Sea. The choice you face is not simply between raiding and farming, but between different paths to power and respect in a society that rewards enough to see those belies opportunity. You could use your silver to buy land and livestock, establishing yourself as a prosperous farmer who occasionally participates in raids. You could invest in weapons and armor, positioning yourself to join larger expeditions as a proven the organized greatest risk of all an warrior. Or you could take to tempt your own crew to, becoming Aowa. Each captain, rather than a foal path, carries its own dangers and rewards. The farmer's life offers security, but limits your potential wool for advancement. You be respect local community, but forgotten bide in your history. The warrior's path provides more opportunities for wealth and glory, but also increases likelihood of uncapped early death. Ship hire stains command the respect and shares to claim the largest of plunder, but they also bear for the lives of their crew's responsibility and the success of their expeditions. A single failed raid can destroy a reputation built over years of successful ventures. As winter deepens and the nights grow long, you spend countless hours by the fire weighing these. Your options, father, wise in the ways of survival warfare if not of, offers his counsel based on decades of experience managing scarce resources. Your mother worries about the dangers that await beyond the familiar boundaries of home, but the decision ultimately rests with you alone of that responsibility, and the weight settles on your shoulders like a familiar cloak. The stories told around the winter fires provide both inspiration and warning for the choices ahead. The skalds sing of heroes who won great victories, places, and earn, but they also remember those in the halls of the gods, who overreached and died forgotten in foreign fields. For every Ragnar Lothbrok who carved out a kingdom with his sword, there are a dozen forgotten captains whose bones rest on the bottom of distant seas. Success in the raider's life requires not just courage and skill, but also the wisdom to recognize when risks outweigh potential rewards. The turning point comes with the arrival of spring traders bringing news from the northern across world. They speak of new opportunities opening in the western lands, where earlier raiders have established permanent settlements. Rich monasteries still await those bold enough to seek them out. Wealthy trading towns grow fat on commerce and ripe for plunder. Most intriguingly, they tell gathering of a great army, the under Avon banners, preparing a campaign that could reshape the political landscape of Britain forever news sets. This your blood racing with possibilities great. A army offers opportunities for both individual glory and collective success that small raiding parties cannot match. The wealth and land won through such campaigns could establish you as a jarl in your own right, with the power your own expeditions, and build a to outfit legacy worthy of the Skald's armies also attract songs, but grate the attention of powerful enemies and involve proportional risk-tional to their potential rewards. The decision crystallizes during a feast, the return of light, celebrating to the northern world. Thorvald Ironarm announces his intention to join the great army, and he invites his most trusted men to accompany him. The invitation is both an honor and a test. Who accept will share those in whatever glory or disaster awaits. Those who decline will be marked as men who chose safety over opportunity, a reputation that could haunt them for the rest of their lives. You accept without hesitation, driven by forces you are only beginning to understand. The peaceful farmer's life that once seemed your only option now appears as a kind of death, a slow suffocation of the spirit that was forged in storm. You embattle tea harvested, the fierce joy that comes from facing impossible odds and emerging victorious. You have felt the brotherhood that binds men together when they share mortal danger for common. These purpose experiences have marked you as any physical wound, creating needs that cannot be satisfied by the gentle rhythms of agricultural life. The preparations for this expedition DW knew of those of your first raid. Where Thorvald's longship carried 32 men, the army will number great in the thousands. Ships acquired, provisions must be built or gathered for months at forged and armour sea, weapons repaired. The logistics of organising such a force require the combined resources of multiple jarls and the cooperation of rival crews who must put aside traditional feuds for the duration of the campaign. Your role in these preparations reflects your new status as a proven warrior. Rather than simply showing up with your weapons and sea chest, you are assigned responsibility for recruiting additional crew members from among the young men of your district. This is both an honour and a challenge, as it requires you to evaluate the character and potential of men who remind you of your own uncertain beginnings. You look for the same drove qualities that you to join Thorvald's original expedition: desperation tempered by courage, strength seasoned with intelligence, and the burning desire to forge a better life through force of arms. The men you recruit come from backgrounds similar to your own: landless younger sons seeking opportunity beyond the boundaries law, farmers whose of inheritance holdings small cannot support growing families, exiles and outcasts who have burned conventional their bridges with society. Each has his own story of hardship and disappointment, but all share the common dream home wealthy of returning and respected. You see your former self reflected in their eager faces and nervous energy, and you remember the mixture of excitement and terror that drove you to take your first steps onto Thorvald's deck. Training these new recruits becomes your primary occupation during the final weeks before departure. The skills that seemed impossibly difficult when you first learned them now come naturally, and you find yourself passing on knowledge that on the kept you alive during your first voyage to row. You teach them how in formation, how to maintain their weapons, how to recognize the signs of changing weather. More importantly, you help them understand the unwritten codes of conduct that govern life aboard a raiding vessel. The bonds formed during this training period, mere instruction, extend beyond. These men will fight beside you in the battles to come, and their survival may depend on lessons you teach them now. In turn, your own success will be measured partly by their performance under fire. This mutual dependence creates relationships that transcend the simple hierarchy of experienced warrior and raw recruit. You become responsible for their welfare in ways that echo the broader responsibilities of leadership. As the great army takes to grasp shape, you begin the true scale of the undertaking. This is not a large, simply raiding expedition, but a migration of entire communities seeking new homes across the sea. Alongside the warriors come craftsmen, merchants, farmers, and even families willing to risk everything for the chance of a better life in foreign lands. The ships that will carry this host range from sleek warships to broad-beamed cargo vessels designed to transport livestock and household goods. The complexity of coordinating such a diverse the leadership abilities of even the most experienced jarls. Questions of command structure, resource allocation, and strategic objectives must be resolved the fleet before can sail. Traditional rivalries between different crews and regions threaten to undermine the unity essential for success. Your position in Own this hierarchy is still evolving, as proven warriors like yourself are gradually incorporated into the command structure of the larger force. The final preparations take place Amid an atmosphere of barely contained excitement and tension, weapons are blessed by priests of the old gods, and sacrifices are made to ensure favorable winds and successful battles. Families say farewell to sons, husbands, and fathers who may never return. Children too young for war watch-eyed as wide their elders prepare for adventures beyond their rention. The entire community participates in rituals that mark the transition from peace to war, from the known world to the unknown possibilities await across the Whale Road. Your own farewells carry different weight than are those of your first departure. Where once by desp you were driven, erration, and uncertainty, you now leave as a man of proven worth with clear objectives and realistic expectations. Your family's tears are mixed with pride in your accomplished confidence, ishments and in your abilities. You are no longer the expendable third son seeking any path away from poverty and judgment, but a warrior whose skills have earned him a place among the respected men of the community. The morning's clear and coal of departure door passage across the north, with steady, swift winds that promise sea. The great fleet assembles in the sheltered waters of a deep fjord, its hundreds of sails creating a forest of canvas beyond that stretch of horizon. The sight representationing, a visual both magnificent and sob, is of the ammunitions, desperate and hopes of entire people. You take your place aboard the Confidence with Thorvald's ship of a veteran, but the knowledge that this with voyage also will test your skills, and in ways your courage itself first raid never did. The departure unfolds with ceremonial precision that reflects months' planning. Ships of careful cast off in predetermined order, with the fastest warships leading, and the slower cargo vessels protected in the center of the formation. Signal horns echo across the water as captains coordinate their movements according to plans rehearsed countless times during the winter months. The entire operation demonstrates the organizational capabilities that have made Norse raiders feared throughout the known world. As your ship clears the fjord and enters the open sea, you feel the familiar sensation of leaving one world behind of Norway FD and entering another. The coast Hades into the morning A's, taking with it the certainties and limitations of your old life. Ahead lie the grey waters of the North Sea, and beyond them the green shores of Britain, where kingdoms rise and fall according to the fortunes of war. You of a force are part that could reshape the political landscape of an entire island, carving out new realms for those bold enough to seize them. The scale of this expedition changes everything about experience of seafaring. Where your first voyage involved a single ship navig captaining by their skill and instincts, the great fleet moves according to carefully coordinated plans that account for varying speeds and capabilities of different vessels. Signal flags and horn calls maintain communication between ships spread across miles of ocean. The logistics of keeping such a force supplied and organized at sea represent achievements of planning and execution that rival any military operation in the civil role withinized world. Your own, this vast enterprise continues to evolve as the voyage progresses. The recruiting and training responsibilities you assumed before departure have established you as a leader among the newer warriors. But the Great Fleet offers opportunities for advancement that would never in an exist single-ship expedition. Fighters with leadership-proven abilities are needed at every level of the command structure, individual from managing ship crews to coordinating attacks involving hundreds of warriors. The transformation from individual raider to part of a vast military machine as there becomes apparent fleet encounters its first major challenge. A fierce storm rises of grey water across from the northwest the formation, driving walls and testing every captain's ability to maintain position and course a single ship might ride out such. Where running before the wind or weather by seeking shelter in a protected cove, the great fleet must hold together despite waves that threaten to scatter vessels across hundreds of miles of hostile ocean. You watch from Thorvald's deck as ships struggle to maintain their assigned positions in the formation. The slower cargo vessels, heavy with supplies and livestock, wallow dangerously in the troughs between waves. Several times you see vessels disappear behind towering walls of water, only to emerge moments later with their crews beekeep from mailing frantically to being swamped. The discipline and seamanship required to hold such a force together in these conditions speaks to the quality of leadership at every level of the expedition. Your own responsibilities during the storm involve more than simply manning an oar or managing sail. The newer warriors you recruited look to you for guidance and reassurance as the ships pitch and roll in the heavy seas. Their faces show the same mixture of terror and determination you remember from your own first voyage. But now you are the veteran whose calm presence helps steady their nerves. You find yourself repeating the same words of encouragement that kept you focused during your own initiation into the brutal realities of life at sea. The storm passes after 2 days of continuous battering, leaving the fleet scattered but intact across a broad expanse of calmer water. The complex process of regrouping the ships reveals both the strengths and weaknesses of operating such a large force. Signal fires lit on the largest vessels guide stragglers back to the main formation, while scout ships range across the horizon, searching for vessels that may have been driven far off course. The discipline and organization displayed during this recovery operation demonstrates why Norse expeditions have succeeded where other people's attempts at large-scale amphibious operations have failed. On the horizon, you begin. As the British coast appears to understand the strategic thinking behind this massive undertaking, where individual raiding parties must strike quickly and retreat before local forces can organize resistance, the Great Army possesses the strength to establish permanent footholds and conduct extended campaigns. The wealth and territory that can be won through such operations dwarf anything achievable through simple and run tactics. But hit the risks are proportionally greater, as failure would mean the destruction of not just a single crew, but an entire generation of Nordic warriors. The target selected for the army's first major operation is the wealthy Anglia, chosen Kingdom of East for its rich monasteries, Eurus trading prosp towns, and relatively military-weak Bayenses. Intelligence Def Gather earlier identified specific raiders has that objectives for reward maximum offer minimum risk. Unlike the monastery you attacked during targets are substantial your first voyage. These enough to justify the deployment remaining vulnerable of warriors, while of thousands to the kind of overwhelming assault that the Great Army can deliver. The landing place not takes on the mouth of a major and beach, but at Isolate River that will the fleet allow rate deep into enemy territory. To pen it, hundreds of ships discharge cargo in their human, carefully, lest nothing so much as a migration that resemble leap-coordinated operation entire people of in the shallow. Warriors begin water-carrying weapons and supplies, while crews into the process fought of establishing AI-fied base camp that will serve as the expedition's headquarters for the duration of the campaign. Your first glimpse of this alien landscape reveals a world far removed from the harsh beauty of the Norwegian fjords. Rolling green hills stretch toward the horizon, broken by patches of cultivated farmland and clusters of wooden buildings. The very fertility of the soil speaks to wealth beyond anything possible in your homeland, where every acre must be wrested from rock and forest through back-breaking labour. Here, nature herself human seems to invite habitation and reward agricultural effort with abundant harvests. The speed with which the army transforms from airing force SIAF into a land-based military machine demonstrates the versatility that ships are feared throughout Europe has made Norse warriors dragged onto the beach and converted into temporary shelters and workshops. Defensive earthworks rise around the perimeter of the camp, manned by warriors whose seamanship skills prove equally valuable in the construction of fortifications. The same men who navigated storm-tossed seas now digged Shah trenches and pen stakes with the methodical efficiency of professional role in this transformation involves soldiers. Your responsibilities that extend far beyond simple manual labour. The you recruit warriors during the winter months require guidance in adapting their seafaring skills to the demands of land warfare. The tactics that served aboard ship must be modified for fighting in open fields and besieging fortified positions. More importantly, the psychological adjustment from the cramped intimacy of ship scopeboard life to the broader of a major military campaign requires leadership support and from experienced hands like yourself. The first test of the Army's capabilities comes sooner than expected when local forces attempt to drive the invaders back into the sea. A force of East Anglian cavalry appears on the hill skirting the landing site, their colour overloophal banners and polished weapons impressive, creating and displayed to intimidate the design Norse warriors. But the psychological warfare cuts both ways, as the sight of thousands of battle-hardened Vikings deploying for combat has an equally demoralising effect on defenders who have never faced such numbers or such fierce opposition. The battle follows represents that your first experience of large 100-scale warfare, a conflict involving of warriors on each side, rather than the small-scale skirmishes that characterized your earlier raiding experiences. The noise alone is overwhelming, a continuous roar of clashing weapons, show, and scrutiny menaming horses that drow commands ands out the individual conversations that define board combat ship. The scale of violence is anything you witness exceed during the monastery raid, as disciplined formations clash across battlefield that stretches beyond the limits of vision. Your position in this chaos is both more and more terrifying than anything you experienced aboard ship. The presence of hundreds of allied warriors provides protection and support unavailable to small raiding parties. But the scale of combat also means that individual skill and courage can be overwhelmed by sheer numbers or tactical mistakes. You fight as part of a formation, rather than as an individual warrior, your personal fate tied to the success or failure of the larger unit, rather than depending solely on your own abilities. The East Anglian cavalry, as they impressive appear, prove no match for the disciplined infantry tactics of the Norse army. Warriors trained in the close-quarters combat of shipboard fighting adapt quickly to the formation warfare required on land. Their axes and swords, designed for the confined ship's decked spaces of A, prove equally effective in the press of a shield-most wall. Importantly, they're in facing experienced death as part of their profession. A routine gives them a psychological advantage over enemies who view warfare as an occasional interruption of normal life. The victory is complete and devastating. The East Anglian force breaks and flees, leaving the field littered with their dead and wounded. The survivors carry news of the defeat back to their king with terror, alongifying reports of an enemy that fights with supernatural ferocity and seems immune to fear. This psychological impact proves as valuable as the tactical success, as word spreads throughout the kingdom that a force unlike any seen before has landed on British shores. The aftermath of battle brings responsibilities you never faced as a simple crew member on a raiding ship. The wounded must be cared for, the dead given proper burial or burning according to their beliefs, and the prisoners interrogated for information about enemies' resources plans and your growing reputation as a leader places you in charge of processing gives, a cap task that requires both military judgment and political sensitivity. The prisoners themselves represent a cross-section of East Anglian society, from common soldiers pressed into service to nobles who led the cavalry charge. Each provides of information about different types, the kingdom's military capabilities, political divisions. Soldiers reveal resources, the common and economic details about garrison strengths and defensive preparations. Offer the nobles' insights into court politics and potential allies who might be persuaded to switch sides. All of this intelligence feeds into the army's strategic planning for the campaign. The interrogation process also provides your first extended contact with the people whose land you have. Unlike invade the monks of your first raid, who seem to inhabit a different world entirely, these warriors share many of the same values and concerns that motivate Norse society. They fight for wealth, honour, and the protection of communities. They're weapons of their families and, while different in and armour detail, serve the same purpose as own equipment as your. The realization that your enemies are not so a complex different from yourself adds dimension to the conflict that simple raiding never provide. As the Great Army establishes its dominance over the landing, an Ariad begins planning deeper pennet into Eastration's Anglian territory. You find yourself caught between excitement and apprehension about, and what lies ahead. The wealth available and opportunities through this campaign exceed anything possible through traditional raiding, but the scale of commitment required means may that retreat not be an option if you have go badly cross things the whale, just as a railroad no-tider seeking profit quick, but as a settler preparing to vow a new life in a car foreign land. The construction of permanent than temporary camps quarters, rather winter signals to remain the army's intention in Britain of immediate success. These military fortifications a level represent, regardless of engineering occasion, that transforms sophist the expedite the foundationary force into of a new political entity. The same warriors who arrived ASA suborn raiders are becoming the ruling class of conquered territory, with all the responsibilities and opportunities such transformation entails. Your own evolution from landless younger son to military leader continues structure 4 as the army establishes its administrative governing conquered territory. The skills you developed in recruiting and training warriors prove equally valuable in organizing the civilian population needed to support extended military operations. Farmers must be persuaded or compelled to continue working their fields. Men must be recruit craft to manufacture weapons and equipment. Merchants must be encouraged to maintain trade networks that provide essential supplies. And so, our journey through the blood-soaked waters of the Viking Age draws to a close. You have lived the transformation from desperate farmer's son to hardened sea wolf, felt the bite of salt spray and the weight of silver in your hands. You have tasted both the savage joy of victory and the bitter uncertainty of survival in a world where only the strong endure. Thank you for sailing these ancient waters with me tonight. Until we meet again in the shadows of history, I wish you peaceful dreams.